Hello and welcome to Save Your Sanity. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. If you've just found me, I'm glad you did. And if you're returning, I'm glad you found value and came back. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the dreaded silent treatment. And it happens too frequently. Men do it, women do it. It's out there, it's happening, it makes you feel alone and marginalized and isolated, and that's the point. So we're going to go deeply into the subject tonight of the dreaded silent treatment. What's up, why, and how is it best to respond? Because it's not as intuitive as we might think. So many things to talk about tonight. I'm glad you're here. If you're finding value from the podcast, please become a supporter. Go to patreon.com/saveyoursanity. Patreon.com/saveyoursanity. You can pledge $1, $5, $2, $10, $100, whatever it is that you feel moved to offer. And I appreciate that because it helps to defray the costs of podcasting. So let's move on and let's talk about this dreaded silent treatment. Because I know if you're watching this or listening to this, you have some experience with it. And it's not pleasant experience that you've had. I know for sure. So one thing I know about hijackals, those toxic people that I talk about, and remember, I trademarked the term hijackals so that we wouldn't be using clinical mental health terms. That makes it so easy to talk about patterns, traits, cycles, and behaviors. And so we just talk about hijackals and their behavior or hijackal behavior. And then we stay out of the muddy waters of diagnosis too. So important. So one thing I know about these hijackal folks is when they can't win, they walk. And they walk. One of the ways that they do that is the silent treatment. I'm out of here. They may be physically sitting on the couch, but they are out of here mentally and emotionally. And it's awful. And why do they do it? Because it's all about power. We're going to go into that more deeply, but they must find a way to have power over you. They must find a way to win. And they have a whole lot of those ways, as I'm sure you've experienced. If you've been raised by one or in relationship with one, or have a sibling who's one, or an adult child who is one, or married one, all of these things become really important to understand so that you can better cope with the situation, know how to deal with it. And if at any time you want my help to do that and you're a new client, you can use beaclient.com and use my one-time new client 1-hour offer right there for only $97. We can talk. We can talk about what's going on at beaclient.com. So it's all about power. And sometimes the power is rage. That's the way they express it. And sometimes they express it with silence, the dreaded silent treatment. And why do they do this? Well, they want to avoid listening to you. They don't want to hear your concerns. What do you mean? I have to listen to you? I'm only interested in what I am doing. I'm not interested in you. So they avoid hearing your concerns. They avoid hearing your requests. They avoid hearing your preferences. They avoid hearing your perceptions. And they avoid hearing your requests for change. And that's certainly number one. They're not interested in that because there's no power in that. So another reason that they use the silent treatment is to avoid having to respond to you. You know, basically they're going, all right, you just talk and I am going to tune you out. I'm going to tune you out to the place where I don't even respond as though there's another human in the room. Have you had that experience? It's a sad experience. But we're going to have some really clear things to do before this podcast is over. So certainly stay tuned. You want to be emerging empowered, always that. And you know, that's the name of my new program and my community that's starting very soon. So we always want to have strategies and mindset to be emerging empowered. So the silent treatment is to avoid hearing you. It's to avoid having to respond to you. Because they don't want to. They just don't want to. They don't know how. They have no grounds to respond to you. Maybe they want to entertain the past. That they don't want to entertain the past where they may have made mistakes. They don't want to be reminded of that. And so they also do it to establish that they're upset and they don't want to explain it. So you're supposed to understand by the silent treatment that they are upset and that somehow it's your fault that they're upset. And also, they're going to withhold the opportunity to do anything about that upset by refusing to talk to you and refusing to listen to you. And that's when you really realize this brick wall, this heavy cloud of silence has descended and you can't get anywhere. You can't see where you're going. You can't get through it. And you are left feeling alone. You are left feeling marginalized and isolated, as I said. And then you begin to have some anxiety perhaps come up. And they're counting on that. They are counting on you having anxiety come up because another reason they do the silent treatment is they want to punish you. They want to let you know that they don't care about you. They don't have any concern for you. They aren't interested in you. They want to tell you, you don't matter right now. In fact, what they're really saying is, you're no use to me right now. Remember, never confuse love with someone having uses for you. And hijackals don't have a lot of love to give. Very, very, very little, if any, because they are so shame-based. They are in such a power-hungry status in life that they don't want to give you anything. But they do have uses for you. I know it's so sad to think that you're with somebody that you really thought loved you, but they are really behaving in ways that seem to indicate that they're using you. And the silent treatment is one of those ways. And it can be very abusive. And sometimes we don't want to acknowledge that it is abusive. We feel like it's not fair. Like in last week's podcast, when I talked about the hijackal's warped sense of fair, equal, and just. Well, certainly the silent treatment feels very unfair. And that's just the way they want it to feel. That's just what they want you to get from it. I'm in charge. You don't matter. I make the rules. You follow them or I don't speak to you. And even if you do follow them, I may not speak to you. You know that they will intermittently reinforce you so that sometimes they will do what it is that interests them and actually be sufficiently centered in order to give you the time of day, but other times not. They just don't care. Like you almost don't exist because they need the power more than connection. And so that shows up, and that's what makes you feel so badly when you get the silent treatment often. Because let me in. I'm in this too. Let's have some equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. You will never have that with a hijackal. That's off the menu. It will not happen, but they will be abusive. And I know, I've done many episodes where we've acknowledged that it's difficult to call someone abusive. It's difficult to believe you're in an abusive relationship. But let me give you a few ideas that go along with the silent treatment in relationship and how it's abusive. It's when they intend to hurt you with their silence. That's abusive because they intend to hurt you. They intend to disempower you. So they really don't have your best interest at heart. They have no intention of demonstrating love or caring or anything to do with building trust. They simply don't care enough. So their intention is abusive when they decide they want to hurt you with their silence. Can you take that in as abusive? I hope so. I mean, none of us wants to think we're abused. But when we actually wake up and smell the herbal tea and realize these things are abusive, then we can get a little energy behind it and say, I refuse to be abused. And that's so important to do. So that's why it's important to be able to call it what it is. So how else is a silent treatment abusive? Well, if it lasts for very long, I was giving a class, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, in communication and conflict management. And we got to the place of the silent treatment, and a young man put up his hand and he said, I just have one question. How long is it usual for the silent treatment to last? Now, I knew that young man and I knew the difficulty he was having. And I said, how long doesn't she speak to you for? And he said, well, usually the minimum is 6 weeks. That's abusive. Now, I realized that she didn't intend to be abusive. I know the story of that relationship. She just didn't know how to bring up anything to him. And so he just felt everything was fine. And then she'd go quiet and he didn't understand. So it wasn't in that case intended to be abusive. It was a different dynamic. But if there is extended periods of time of the silent treatment, that is abusive. And you must take note of that, because someone is basically telling you, you don't deserve to draw breath and take up space in my life, in this relationship, in this room, in this moment. And nobody has the right to tell you that. You absolutely do deserve to take up space and draw breath. You absolutely do have the right to say what you think, feel, need, and want. So it's abusive when someone shuts you out for long periods of time. Another way that it's abusive is they decide when the silence ends. Doesn't matter what you do, they decide. And so they are in charge and taking charge of the relationship, even though that wasn't by agreement at all. And that becomes abusive because it's power over another person with the intent to hurt. So there it is again. And what else happens? Well, what if they talk to other people in the house, but they refuse to talk to you? Right? That's abusive. Haven't you been in one of those situations where there is a silent treatment going on and one partner says to the other, tell your mother or father this, as though you're not there? That's abusive. It's also abusive to the child because that's inappropriate behavior for them to be asked to engage in. So that's really important. And they'll also seek alliances from other people. I have a right to cut this person out. I have a right to perpetrate the silent treatment on them because I can, or I think they're wrong. And the technique that they're choosing, the silent treatment, is abusive, and it is unnecessary, and it is non-inclusive. And therefore, we're never going to get to those 3 must-haves of a healthy adult relationship that by now everybody who's listening to me can chant them with me: equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. There won't be any when you're in a relationship with a hijackal. It is just by definition not going to happen. But it is abusive when the silent treatment's engaged and then they seek other people to ally with against you, or ally with to shore up their decision not to talk to you and to validate them for being right and righteous not to talk to you. And it also is abusive when they use silence to blame their partner and make them feel guilty. Because this whole silent treatment thing is often about getting you to beg and plead and apologize for things you didn't do in order to be noticed, in order to be seen by the hijackal. Now, when I put it in those terms, you see clearly how nasty that is. I know you feel how nasty it is, but think how it looks. There's just a whole wrong thing about this, that it is so non-inclusive, and it is to make you feel guilty so that you will be jumping up and down saying, what can I do? What can I do? What do I need to say? How can I make you talk to me? And you don't love somebody that you put in that position, and definitely putting them in that position does not demonstrate anything like love. So we have to notice it is not love, it is manipulation. It is not love at all. And if you find yourself anxious and wanting to do whatever it is to get them to talk to you, then you're going to enjoy learning how to respond in better ways just a little bit later in the broadcast. So the last way that it's abusive is they're silent in order to improve you or pressure you to change. Like, I will deign to talk to you when you do what I want you to do. And then you know that there is this other piece that comes into play there, that when you do exactly what they want you to do, they don't care because they've moved the marker and they want you to do something else. Very difficult to be validated at any moment by a hijackal, except when they really, really want something from you. And then all of a sudden they're all sweet and nice for a hot minute until they get what they want. But you are hooked into, oh, good, they like me, they like me. Maybe they're going to turn a corner. You're just hooked into that hope. And I've spoken about that so often. So go back and refer to other episodes. But this silent treatment has so many dynamics to it, as you can tell, and it becomes so imperative for us to understand the abusive nature of this. If we don't have the skills to communicate or to manage conflict, we may engage in the silent treatment, like the wife of that young man in my seminar, because she just didn't know what to do. The only way she knew to get his attention or to let him know that she was upset was to stop speaking. He was not abusive. She was not abusive. They were just fearful and young and without skills. So it becomes important to shore up your skills and your strategies, just as we're doing tonight, to know what to do about it. Because people who engage in the silent treatment will engage in other kinds of emotional abuse. And it's really important to monitor their activities, see exactly what's going on, observe it for what it is. Don't make excuses or rationalize or justify. Or, as you know, in my definition of enabling, make the consequences go away for the poor choices of others. It's a poor choice for this person to fall silent on you and then treat you as though you're the problem when they are actually being the problem. So we want to be very, very clear about that. So I hope you have a clear idea now about what this is all about, what's really going on in the silent treatment. Maybe I added a few things into the mix for you to think about because it's important. And if you want to know where to look for memes and graphics that you might share in groups that you belong to help other people understand these things, you can go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/hijackals. And I put all kinds of things there for you to share, also for you to learn from, of course, but for you to share, because I know many of you may be in groups on Facebook and all where you're talking about narcissistic abuse or toxic relationships. And it's nice to be able to have something to contribute. So go to facebook.com/hijackals and I have it all there for you. So here we are. We've determined what this dreaded silent treatment is about, what's up, why they do it. So now let's move into the very important part, the empowering part of how do you respond. So the first thing I'm going to do is tell you what not to do, okay? Because you may have gotten into some habits with some hope that it was going to work for you, and these things will not work for you. So what not to do? Don't respond with blame, don't respond with anger, don't respond with shame. Don't do any of those things. I know it's hard because you are so upset, you are angry, and you want to blame them for not talking to you. But when you do that, you give them power. So all that you can say rather than responding with blame, anger, or shame is to explain how their behavior affects you. And I'm going to talk about that in the what to do in a moment. What not to do? Don't beg them to talk to you. Don't plead with them to talk to you. Don't tell them how much you miss them, want them, what can I do? What can I do? Do not take a stance that makes you less than them, because that's what they want. And that, if you do it, will continue to create inequity, and that will deteriorate the relationship further. and there will be more abuse. So you don't want to be doing that. So don't beg them to talk to you or plead with them to talk to you or make promises if they'll talk to you, because that's just feeding their power hungry selves. Another thing not to do is to apologize for things that you didn't do. Now, sure, absolutely. If you did something and you know clearly what it is, apologize, because that's modeling the behavior you'd like to see from them. Own that behavior. Absolutely. But what happens is that people who perpetrate the silent treatment want you to try and figure out why they're not talking to you. And they then start demanding that you apologize for things that you didn't do. In fact, that's probably one of the reasons that they fell silent, because you wouldn't apologize for something that they said you did that you didn't do, right? So, what not to do? Don't apologize for something you did not do, because that changes that balance again, and it's not good. And don't push it by trying to reason with them. They are not in a state, in a mental, emotional, physical state to be reasoned with. They are behaving unreasonably by doing the silent treatment. So when you come along and want to carefully lay out why it is important for them to be speaking to you, you just again fall into the trap, that hijackal trap, and you give them power, which is what they wanted. Now, here's a big one not to do. I know, summon this up, but do your best to not take the silent treatment personally. It's about them. It's not about you. And as soon as you begin to make that separation, oh, things get a whole lot better. You can breathe, you can expand, you can take up more space. And this is important, absolutely important to do. So, as I said, I know it's difficult because it feels personal, but if you can bring yourself to say, whatever reason you have, this is you're saying it in your head, whatever reason you have for not speaking to me has nothing to do with me. It's your choice, it's your perception, it's your bid for power, and I am not going to take it personally. And the last thing not to do is to threaten to leave unless you're going to. Because as I've said many times, when you put out a boundary, it needs to be non-negotiable. It can't be a threat. You don't threaten with your boundaries. They have to be real. And they won't be real if you threaten to leave, if they don't talk to you, and then they don't talk to you and you don't leave. So you're teaching them that your word is not accurate. So don't be doing that. So let's talk about the what to do's. Now, here's where the power comes. First of all, name what's going on. Just because they're being all silent over there doesn't mean you can't speak. So say something about them. And I wrote an example for you. You might say, I noticed you're not responding to me. I'd like to resolve this, and I'd like to know why you're not speaking to me. That's you using the personal weather report, and it allows you to say, here's what's going on for me. I'm noticing this actual fact. You're not speaking to me. I'd like to resolve it, and I'd like to understand why there is silence. So you're only speaking about yourself. Remember the personal weather report, that you have the right to say what you think, feel, need, and want, as long as you do not mention another human by name or pronoun. And I have a chapter in my book, Kaizen for Couples, 2 chapters actually, that are all about that. So if that interests you, you'd like to be better skilled, go to kaizenforcouples.com, KAIZEN for couples.com. And you can learn about the personal weather report there. So first of all, respond by naming it and speaking about them. You're speaking about yourself, but you're addressing their behavior. So I notice you're not responding to me. Duh. But everybody knew that. But you're giving it a voice. And then you say, I'd like to respond to resolve this issue, and I'd like to know why the silence. Or name it about yourself and say, when I'm feeling shut out, I feel frustrated and uncertain and alone. I'd like to know what the issue is. So again, you're using the personal weather report. Here's what's going on for me over here. I'm feeling frustrated and uncertain and alone. Yes, yes, that's what they want you to feel. But you are emerging empowered. You are going to give some voice to what's going on within you, whether they care or not. And this is an important step in rebuilding yourself, rebuilding that strength to be emerging empowered. So, two ways to name what's going on. That's absolutely a good thing to do. And then the second is to refuse to engage in the whole game of the silent treatment, because that's really what it is. It's a game of dare and bluff. You know, if I can get you to do what I want you to do, and then I can pretend that I'm going to withhold everything from you until you do what I want you to do, then you respond and engage with that. Only goes sideways and downhill from there. You may have tried that before and it didn't work well. It doesn't work well. So, second big thing after name it is to refuse to engage, because the silent treatment is a form of passive aggression and they use it to control you. And they want you to make the first move. They want you to beg, they want you to plead, they want you to apologize even when you did nothing wrong, because they think they are so important that you should want to have them speak to you. I think that that's a kind of faulty thinking. And if you can get yourself twisted back to the right position about that, then I don't want to play, right? Why would I want to play? It's your game. You make the rules. You are withholding. You are trying to have power over me. Not a game I want to play. I refuse to engage. And when you do that, you just sit neutrally, you go about your business, you do whatever needs to be done. Maybe you go and see a friend. Maybe you have children and you engage with the children about anything except what's happening with the silent partner. And then that refusal to engage eventually wears it down. Yes, they'll get angry. Yes, they'll rage. Yes, they may leave, but that's okay. You need to be taking up space, drawing breath, knowing you have the right to do that. Just because they've got their knickers in a twist doesn't mean you have to. So that's a powerful position. And the last one I want to encourage you to engage in is to enjoy the silence. um, I know that sounds counterintuitive when you're all anxious and what have I done wrong and what do they want and what do I need to do and how do I fix this? But if you can just get to the place of naming it, just floating those ideas on the air, then refusing to engage by begging or pleading or apologizing for something you didn't do, or make the first move, and you just simply go about your business. Oh, it's quiet. There are no expectations. There's nobody telling me what they want. There's nobody making demands. None of that is happening. I'm going to enjoy the silence and go about my business. And that is very powerful. So many times online, people ask me, what should I do? They're not speaking to me again. And I tell them, enjoy the silence. Oh, well, they'll never stand for that. Well, they can't make you talk. I mean, certainly they could get physical with you and have a good go at it. But if it's just simply on the verbal level, you don't have to engage and you can just enjoy the silence. It's all very passive aggressive what they're doing. You don't want to play that game. I wrote a book called Stop That's Crazy Making, How to Quit Playing the Passive Aggressive Game. It's on Amazon. Stop That's Crazy Making, it's called. If any of this is sounding familiar, just get that little book and read it. It's an ebook. You can just immediately download it. Stop That's Crazy Making, How to Quit Playing the Passive Aggressive Game. So after you've enjoyed the silence and the silence is broken, then the time comes to really set some boundaries. you know, if this kind of behavior is going to be taking the place of an emotionally mature relationship, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to walk? Are you willing to say your non-negotiable boundaries? Well, I really hope you are, because that's what makes the difference. When you take up space again and are willing to state non-negotiable boundaries. I know the silent treatment is horrible, horrible, horrible. It's nasty, it's terrible, and if it's been going on for a while, it can have you feeling quite desperate. I know that. But if you're wondering about the passive aggressive business and you haven't been to my checklists, go over to relationshipchecklists.com. That's one of my sites. And there are 4 checklists there that have no charge at all to help you figure out what's going on. And one of them is the passive aggressive checklist. And you do part 1, and if your score is high, then it directs you to do part 2. And you can learn a whole lot about passive aggressive behaviors at relationshipchecklists.com. Or if you don't want to remember that, you can just go to my website and then look in the navigation bar and you'll see the free checklists right there for relationshiphelp.com, FOR relationship, HELP.com. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been empowering. I hope you see that you have options when the silent treatment is abounding, because if you use that time wisely, you'll be the only one doing it, and it'll give you an advantage. So until we talk again, be very good to yourself, because you matter. Talk soon. Hello. Good evening. Welcome. Oh, new people. How lovely. Great. Let me look and see what you had to say. And let me remind you, you can ask any question about toxic relationships. It doesn't have to be one about the silent treatment. But know that when you put it in the comments and you hit send, it takes 20 seconds to get to me. Oh, Demi says, I'm looking forward to this. I get months and years of the silent treatment. It's incredibly hurtful. It certainly is to me. It really is. Tanya says, hi, I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. Thank you. That's lovely to hear. I'm glad that you find value in our times together when you are there and I am here and you are hearing my voice. I hope that that's helpful. And if you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook, I'm in and out of all those places frequently. So I'm glad that you've come and joined us here tonight. All right. Hi. And Salty says, my ex is the master of the silent treatment. It makes healthy co-parenting practically impossible. Yes. Well, I guess you had a clue. Nothing about any of it was going to be healthy, right? So healthy co-parenting gets very difficult, and then your child becomes a messenger and a pawn and a weapon of divorce. And that's what happens when you're co-parenting with a hijackal. I spent several years doing the high conflict co-parenting course on behalf of the Superior Court here. So I have had lots of experience knowing exactly what that's like when you're endeavoring to co-parent with a high conflict person, which is certainly a hijackal or toxic person, someone with narcissistic, sociopathic, or psychopathic tendencies, or maybe a borderline. So it is very difficult to have any healthy modeling for your child or your children, and very difficult to always have to have kind of one eye open. What are they up to now? So I know that's very difficult. Deborah, hello. She said, I just had the silent treatment where I didn't exist while being in the room for the last 24 hours until I could leave. This time, I will say it almost became funny since I recognized it quickly. Yes, well, when you watch them having their little tantrum and think that they're having power over you, I can see where you would be amused after a while, like, oh, you're doing that, are you? You're doing that again. I have no idea why, but that's what you're up to, and that's who you are, and you're showing me that's who you are. Check, got it. Not attractive. not wanting to play. So very important. So you did it, Deborah, until you could leave. Well, that's an interesting situation. I'm sure that you have other things that you might say about that, so feel free to put them in here. Tanya said, I was waiting and I missed the whole thing. Um, what were you waiting for? Oh, the broadcast. I don't know what you were referring to, Tanya, but of course it's recorded, so you can listen at any time. Rose asks, why would they not want to see the kids? Is it a manipulation tactic? Well, it can be a manipulation tactic, but let me say a few things about hijackals and kids. They're not interested in their children very much, except to have power over them and have uses for them and have them validate them by making them look good. So they want the children usually just so that you can't have them. But when they go to not wanting to see their kids, it's usually because they have other supply. They have other people who will validate their existence for them, so they don't want to see the children. Also, it's a way they think it's punishing you, that you will have to look after the children. Really important thing to do about that, Rose, is to make sure that you document everything. Every time that they were supposed to have the children but didn't, every time that they were coming but then at the last minute didn't, and everything in between. Because people who behave that way need the court to see the patterns so that there's no point in them having custody if they do not interact with the children. So that becomes a very important piece of that puzzle. So certainly why they wouldn't want to see the kids is because kids take up time and money and attention. And if there's nothing in it for the hijackal, then they're too busy. They don't want to be bothered. Tanya says, I almost missed the signs because it was extremely subtle. Ah, yes, yes. Sometimes it is subtle. You're just slowly being cut off or ignored, or, they get that smirk. Again, at facebook.com/hijackals, I've got all these memes, and one of them is about the smirk. And that smirk, an episode that I did with David Hill quite a while ago, he's a facial coding expert. And he says that smirk that hijackals get is the combination of anger and disdain. And so that smirk comes across as contempt for you. And that's what they do. They have that little smirk, and it can be very subtle, just like she has no idea what I'm doing to her. Or he has no idea how I've cut him off or cut him down. And just that little half smile, look of contempt shows all the time. And many of the signs are subtle, just as you said, Tanya. So I hope that it's been helpful tonight to see some more depth to that issue, because that's important to catch. And some of them are very good at doing it subtly. Others are not quite so skilled or don't care so much. And so they have no finesse at all. They're just right out there in the open, doing and being and saying whatever it is that gets them what they want, or shutting down completely and giving you the silent treatment in some crass way. And then very often they have a mouth on them, don't they? And so they are demeaning and degrading, and they say things to you and they say things in front of the children that are just despicable. And they'll say that about you while they're giving you the silent treatment. They'll say that in a room with other humans. And that's important to notice too. Tanya said, I had it open and I was waiting. It's all good. I'll watch the replay. Good. Tanya said it was actually the smirk that really helped me see it. Good. Anytime you see that smirk, anytime, silent treatment or not, anytime you see that smirk, know that what's going on in the brain of a hijackal is power over, and contempt for whomever it is they're thinking of. And so it's a good sign to watch for. I'll just say a word for people who haven't been here before. If 30 seconds goes by and there are no more comments or questions, I end this session. So if you have a question and you're sitting on it, Know that you can ask any question about toxic relationships, but do ask it now because we're out of comments and questions. And if you want something, now is the time to ask for it. There's so many pieces to this puzzle, as you know. Tonight's episode is number 207, and there are a bunch of bonus episodes too. So that's 207 topics approached from different ways to help you. So when you go to saveyoursanitypodcast.com, you'll notice that there is a little magnifying glass that you can search on if you have an issue in mind or you want something specific. You can search on that. Tanya said, I was extremely vexed all the time and I couldn't figure out why. Yeah, well, that's the game of the hijackal, to keep you feeling anxious, a little bit angry, frustrated, and unsafe. And then they feel that they have power over you. So a hijackal just loves, loves, loves to create confusion and chaos in your life and in the home. And that's one of the ways that they think that they are getting power. And they do if you give it to them. And then after you watch all of this for a while and you see it happening, you have to make decisions because your children are watching and you're experiencing it. And tough as it may be, don't let the fact that you loved them in the beginning, because the person you met in the beginning is not the person you're seeing now. Don't get confused that you have to keep taking what they're dishing out. You really, really don't. Tanya says, thank you so much. I thought it was me, but now that I'm out, I really see it more and more upon reflection. Yes, it's easier to see the patterns when you're outside of them, for sure. And that's why I do the podcast, so I can tell you all about the patterns while you're in it or after you've removed yourself from it. These are destructive patterns. They're damaging patterns. You know, I heard someone say the other day, make sure that you take really good care of the home that you create. So the hallmark of it is to raise children who don't need therapy. And I think that there's a whole lot to that, right? So we want to be very aware. People ask me all the time, should I leave? I don't know the answer to that. I have to work with you privately. But one thing I'll tell you is a myth: staying together for the children. That is never a good idea, except at certain psychological times when they're little. But the rest of it, not a good idea, because the children are seeing dysfunction. Now, I know, I'm not saying you're wrong if you stay. I know there are compelling reasons to stay. Often hijackals have taken over all the finances, and slowly you've been isolated out of the financial situation. They love to get you involved in the romantic idea of moving to a new city out in the country. Let's get off the grid. And then all of a sudden you find yourself out there with no money, no car, no access to anything, and you are 100% dependent. I understand that. And so these are important considerations. Tanya said, I watched you for a month and I finally figured it out. Good. Once I did it, it had no power over me. Yay. Good. I'm so glad. That's great. And Deborah says, refusing to engage has caused a last-ditch effort of a false accusation in order to get what they have been trying to get from me emotionally. That one I still need to perfect my response to. Good. Well, it sounds like you're on it, so you will find a way to do that. Remember, if I can help and you're a new client, go to beaclient.com. And the membership and the new community will all be out soon for Emerging Empowered. And I just made this great product that's going to be available for people. They found these flip-flops, and right on the sole, on the inside of the bottom where your foot goes on top, you're going to be standing on the affirmation, I am emerging empowered. I think that will be a wonderful thing for the summer. So many things going on. I'm glad that you were here with me tonight. I'm glad that you engaged. Know that I'm here so far haven't missed a Monday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So put it on your calendar if you want notification and you're on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you're in the Facebook group, be sure to like the page, and then you will know what the topic is for each Monday evening. It comes out somewhere between 11 and 2 each Monday so that you can find out if you'd like to join in. And feel free to invite your friends along too. Tell them about it and have them come. It's a great place to have conversation, create community, and get your questions answered. So until we talk again, I hope you will take really good care of yourself. Don't let anybody have power over you. You find the power within yourself and be emerging empowered. Talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye.